The anime adaptation of the One Punch Man manga was simply amazing and remained pretty faithful to it, but there are some small differences between the two. Things like new added content or scenes and even small details, and the fact that the anime is, well, animated. Today I'm going to be going over those differences and compare them and give you my thoughts on them and all that good stuff. But before we begin, I'm specifically going to be going over the first season of the One Punch Man anime and the manga chapters that cover them. So that means 12 episodes and 37 chapters. I'm also gonna let y'all know right now that I personally like both the anime and the manga. I don't really have a favorite between the two because both of them have like their own little cool things, and I'm also not here to try to change your guys' mind on whether or not you prefer the manga or anime. It's personal preference, just choose what you like. I just wanted to make that clear before we get started. And to make this as simple as possible, I'm gonna go by episode, so I'm obviously gonna start with episode 1 and we're gonna end on episode 12, which is the final episode of season 1. So yeah, that's enough of that, and let's get started, because here on episode 1 of the anime, it actually starts off with the cool introduction of the city. We get all these cool little extra shots of the civilians and the buildings surrounding the city, and we also have our boy King make a really early appearance too. He's in that hoodie and backpack right there. So yeah, there's that, because in the manga they didn't really show any of that. It just got straight into the action. But I'm glad the anime really added those cool little extra scenes of the city, because it kind of really sets the tone, you know. It kind of gives you a good setting of where we're at. We also get an extra shot of a defeated Lightning Max and Smile Man that we did not get in the manga. We also get an extra shot of the news reporters here that are in the middle of the chaos that Vaccine Man is causing, and that hopeless little girl that we see Vaccine Man approaching has a different type of shirt on. Murata likes to put like funny, like generic just logos on shirts, and hers says schoolgirl, while in the anime it doesn't say anything. And in the flashback, when Saitama fights Crablante's death is a whole lot more gory. In the anime everything's just a whole lot more gory, and I don't really have a problem with that at all. I think it just adds more epicness, I should say. I don't know what word to use, okay, but it adds more emphasis on it, okay. And also the ball chin kid actually looks on while Crablante's guts are spilling out, while in the manga that didn't happen at all. And when that flashback is done in the anime, it cuts to Saitama in the grocery store, and later on that grocery store gets completely destroyed by Marugori. So these are shots that weren't in the manga at all. I'm glad they added them in though, because it shows that Saitama had that flashback because he was staring at a piece of crab that he was probably going to buy. You know what, maybe not. He's kind of a cheapskate. Even with all that strength, he ain't the richest guy out there. So yeah. Also, when Marugori is being introduced, there was some cool little extra shots of Marugori himself exercising and getting pumped, and we also get a cool little scene of his older brother Fukago, I don't really know how to say his name, but we see a cool little scene of him giving him the steroids that has strawberry flavoring in it. And these scenes, of course, were only in the anime, but after the whole Marugori fight, everything's the same up until we get to the custom car monster scene, which is an anime exclusive only monster and scene. So Saitama's having like a little emotional inner monologue, and obviously this monster car approaches him and he quickly deals with him. They probably added this scene in to help with like the pacing, and it probably helps like I feel like it's just a way better transition into the subterranean fight, which we're about to talk about right now, because the subterranean fight is it's a lot longer in the anime and a lot more epic than in the manga, because in the manga it was pretty short, and in the anime they added a lot of new scenes that weren't in the manga, and our boy Saitama looks a little bit more injured in the manga too. Moving on to episode 2, the anime starts off the same as the manga, but we see Saitama wearing a different shirt, whereas in the manga he's wearing a black shirt that says Hage. I think that's what it says. I have no idea what that means, but yeah. I forgot to mention that at the end of the credits of episode 1 we actually get a Genos tease, whereas in the manga he doesn't actually get shown up until chapter 5. And speaking of Genos, his shirt in the manga actually says genocide. I can't tell you why exactly they make these type of changes with the shirts and stuff, but it's probably for stylistic reasons or some shit. But yeah, in the anime, when Saitama meets Genos, Saitama is chasing after the mosquito with mosquito spray, as where in the manga he's just running after the mosquito. I need Saitama's dedication in real life, man. I don't know how he does it. And when Saitama defeats Mosquito Girl in the manga, it shows that Saitama slaps her across some buildings, as where in the anime he slaps her and she explodes, and it was pretty gory. Like I said, the anime, they love their blood, man, and I think I do too. I don't mind those changes. When Dr. Genus is introduced in episode 2, we see some extra shots added in the anime where we see Dr. Genus looking at some S-class heroes like Pig God, Watchdog Man, Super Alloy Darkshine, and Metal Bat. But in the manga, it instead shows Dr. Genus reviewing some footage of Saitama, and it looks like his laboratory is a lot more visible in the manga. We can see all the bodies in the background and stuff. Pretty creepy. Later on, when they're fighting the House of Evolution monsters, Beast King kind of just shows up out of nowhere, whereas in the manga, he walks up to Saitama and gives props to Ground Dragon for putting Saitama in the ground like a vegetable. Also, the fight between Armored Gorilla and Genos was obviously extended because it's the anime, and yeah. But when Saitama rises up from the ground, he dusts himself off, and Beast King patiently just waits for him to do that, while in the manga, he just straight up just starts throwing hands with Saitama, and he even ends up killing Frogman and Sluggerus. But in the anime, there's just a standalone shot of them getting sliced. And when Saitama kills Beast King with his consecutive normal punches, it's a lot more gory as usual, and we also get a very funny shot of Saitama's face when he chases after Ground Dragon. In the manga, we still get that same face, but at a completely different angle where we see both Ground Dragon and we see Saitama with his arms out. And when Saitama rises up from the ground in the anime, he just straight up rises up, but in the manga, he punches his way out of the ground. Just a small little detail and small change. A major difference between the anime and the manga is that the manga throws in some bonus chapters, and a lot of those bonus chapters are really good because they offer you insight on some characters that really don't get a lot of manga screen time, I guess, and you also get a lot of cool stories about Saitama. But the anime has something similar, which are called OVAs, or anime specials, and these OVAs slash anime specials contain a lot of story material that's not in the manga, so those are also pretty cool to watch. I really recommend you checking out a lot of these bonus chapters in the manga, and of course the OVAs in the anime, and you can always find them on a DVD set that you can buy from them, or you can just go on an illegal website to you know what, just forget I said anything. Moving on to episode 3, when we are being introduced to Dr. Genus and his backstory, there are some added scenes in the anime for better pacing and stuff, and of course his laboratory is a lot more detailed in the anime. It makes it look a lot more creepier and gives Dr. Genus those mad scientist vibes. When Genos and Saitama arrive to the House of Evolution and they encounter Carnage Kabuto for the first time, and Carnage Kabuto challenges Saitama to fight in the battle room, the battle room looks a lot more different. In the manga, it looks smaller and it looks more like a battle room, but in the anime, it's like one giant arena, just a huge cube that they're in. It looks pretty cool though, so I don't mind the change. In the anime, when Saitama is about to fight Carnage Kabuto, it cuts to Dr. Genus, injured and walking, and we get a little bit of background or exposition on him. And in the manga, when it shows Carnage Kabuto backing away from Saitama after his danger signals go off, he just simply backs away with a hop, but in the anime, it shows him with his wings. It gives him more of that beetle vibe, because in the House of Evolution, a lot of their monsters are animals or bugs. It's just a small little detail. In the anime, it adds a few extra scenes to really emphasize the workout regimen and the hard work that Saitama put into to get his strength. After Saitama makes quick work of Carnage Kabuto and he realizes that he's going to miss the bargain sale at the grocery store today, in the manga, that's all that happens, but in the anime, there's a little extra scene where Genos tells Saitama that they can't miss it if they hurry up, so that was pretty cool. Moving on to episode 4, we get introduced to Moomin Rider a lot more early, whereas in the manga we get introduced to him a little bit later. But in the anime, there's a scene where Moomin Rider helps a little boy with his balloon that got stuck in a tree. Everything plays out the same in the anime, in the manga, up until we get to the point where Hammerhead meets Speedo Sound Sonic, and in the manga, Speedo Sound Sonic just pops up out of nowhere, but in the anime it shows him coming up from black smoke. Very ninja-like of him. We also get a added scene that's not in the manga at all in this episode, where it shows Dr. Kusano and Genos talking about Saitama. So that was pretty cool. When Speedo Sound Sonic encounters Saitama and they have their little fight, I guess, when Saitama lands that punch on his nuts in the anime, it really emphasizes that shit. It extends that scene for a little bit long, you know, adds some nice slow motion just so you can really take in what he felt at that moment. But in the manga, it was pretty quick. And later on throughout the episode, when Genos and Saitama sit down to talk to each other, in the anime it shows a panel of all the monsters that he had previously defeated, but in the manga there's some extra monsters in there that they didn't show in the anime. And in an anime only scene, they check out the Hero Association's website, but in the manga Genos just gives Saitama a long explanation about it. And also they failed to mention, or I wouldn't say they failed to mention, but they didn't mention in the anime that the Hero Association was founded 3 years ago and that it was founded by Agoni. So yeah. But speaking of anime only scenes, in episode 5 we start off with an anime only scene, and this scene was about the Hero Association's 55th annual hero examination. So of course Saitama and Genos both decide to take the exams, and in the anime it shows some extra tests like a punching machine, whack-a-mole, and of course shot put. And after they're both done with their exams and they get their test results, in the anime it shows an extra pretty humorous scene where Saitama mistakenly mistakes the letter C, or at least the top half of it, for S, and my boy did not make S class, he made C. I'm glad they added that scene in though, it was pretty funny, I'm not gonna lie. But this is also followed up by another anime only scene where Genos is being interviewed by the Hero Association, where he admits to destroying the House of Evolution. This is then followed up by another anime only scene of a My Mask being asked to sign off on Genos on joining the S class. And in the iconic fight / sparring match between Genos and Saitama, Saitama's death punch was of course a lot more devastating in the anime. The way it was emphasized, it really showed you that Saitama is no joke. And of course, with every fight that season 1 adapts into the anime, it's just amazing. There's just, if I were to cover every little single detail in the fights, then this video would be hours and hours long, but I'm not going to. You can just see for yourself how amazing these fights are and the little stuff they add compared to the manga. And of course, after that fight is over, there is an anime only scene where they go eat together at an udon restaurant, where Genos meets a My Mask for the first time. They both have a chat about how he has high expectations for Genos, especially because he's in the S class. And in this episode's end credit scene, Genos asks Saitama if he could move in, and of course he ends up convincing him with some money. And not only that, but in the manga it shows Saitama reading a manga that was made by Murata. It was a one-shot manga, it was just a little Easter egg, but in the anime he was eating a popsicle. It was a very small detail. Moving on to episode 6. Where Genos tells Saitama that he would get dropped from the Hero Association if he is inactive for 1 week. And so in a panic, Saitama decides to go look for criminals to punch, but unfortunately he could not find any. And in the anime there are some extra scenes of like a dog barking at him and just some cool little extra scenery of him failing to find anyone to punch. But everything plays out as normal both in the anime and the manga up until we get this anime only scene of Tatsumaki, aka the Tornado of Terror, where obviously we get introduced to her for the first time, and she's talking to one of the Hero Association workers who are also keeping a close eye on Saitama. After that, the Hero Association has a small discussion about the hero's investigation reports, and we get some slightly different shots in the anime as compared to the manga. They're shown standing in person, whereas in the anime they're shown on a projector. Following that up is when Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball gets sent to Z City to investigate the increased monster activity in that area, and we get a little scene of Spring Mustachio theorizing how the monsters came to be in Z City, and one of his theories actually didn't show up in the anime. It's in the manga, and that theory ends up being correct. So yeah, a little spoiler. And when Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball get their ass beat by Kombu Infinity, our heroes resort to calling for backup, and when the other heroes around the area get the distress call, they're at a completely different location in the anime. Both of these C-class heroes were at the park by a vending machine, as where in the manga they are inside of a restaurant with a bunch of other heroes. And following that, we get an anime only scene of Fubuki and her Blizzard group, and we pretty much never see her again after that. It was an early introduction, but that's pretty much it. But after that is another anime exclusive scene of Tatsumaki, aka Tornado of Terror, scolding bearded worker for not letting her go and do that mission instead. But when those backup heroes arrived after getting the distress call, they investigate the area, and the area looks completely different in the anime as compared to the manga, as you can see here. They also decided to remove one of the C-class heroes for one of the Class A heroes, Blue Fire, for whatever reason, I can't even tell you. After the investigation, there's a group of monsters talking about how City Z is scary for both humans and monsters, and there's also a small little tease about Giro Giro and the Monster Association that's not in the anime at all. Also, during that discussion of the monsters, we also see a few little extra shots that the anime added, like this one of the news reporter. And in the post-credit scene of this episode, we see Genos and Saitama discussing about their ranks and popularity polls, with the manga doing the same, except there are some very small differences. Like, for example, we have Genos' shirt where it says genocide, whereas in the anime it's plain. And we also see Speedo Sound Sonic on the newspaper that Saitama was reading. Not only that, but in the anime we get a little extra shot of this Kombu here, whereas in the manga we get a little tease of the meteor coming down to Earth. Episode 7. This was that infamous meteor episode, and in the anime it starts off with some anime only shots of an astronaut and of course the One Punch Man Universe's International Space Station, and you can see them tracking down the meteor and stuff, whereas in the manga it just shows a couple of panel shots of the meteor getting closer to Earth. I'm glad they added this. It was just a nice little transition. It also gives you the vibes of like the One Punch Man universe being alive, them having their own space station, and seeing the Hero Association working together with them to track down this meteor. Shortly after the introduction of the meteor, we see Genos answering a call to the Hero Association, and we see him letting Saitama know that he's going to head out. And here's where we see a minor change of his apparel, like Murata always does. In the manga, it shows Saitama wearing his Chicago Bulls sweater instead of the yellow sweater that he has on in the anime, so I just wanted to point that out. Also, he scratches his butt in the anime. Everything plays out as normal here in the manga and anime up until the aftermath of the destruction of the meteor, because that's when Saitama goes on a rant. But in an anime only scene, Genos actually stops Saitama from ranting on and walks back home with him, and he's also seen scrolling through forums on his computer. But in the manga, Genos does not do all that, and it ends on Saitama just being socially defeated. This brings us to episode 8, and it starts off with an anime only scene where Moomin Rider is shown heading towards the threat, and that threat being the octopus monster sea folk that Saitama takes care of before Moomin Rider can arrive. Shortly afterwards, in another anime only scene, we see Moomin Rider doing some research on his computer, and we see that he is having trouble keeping up, all this while he's looking at a picture of Saitama in the hero registry. There is also some dialogue that was not added in the manga. It was basically Genos roasting Moomin Rider and Fubuki for not moving up the ranks, and we all know why. You know, Moomin Rider, he ain't the strongest, but he's moving up there slowly, and Fubuki, well, I made a whole video explaining why that is. You can go check that out. I'll leave it in the comments below, maybe in the description. I'll leave it in the description for sure. And of course, there was a lot more stuff that wasn't added in the anime, and it also shows them running past a bunch of carpooling heroes. But in the anime, we don't see that at all. Instead, we see Moomin Rider encountering the carpooling heroes. And in the manga, we also get a nice little bonus chapter showing us how Puri Puri Prisoner and Speedo Sound Sonic escaped prison. As we're in the anime, we just see Puri Puri Prisoner and Speedo Sound Sonic in their prison uniforms, no backstory whatsoever. Speaking about Puri Puri Prisoner, we also get an extended transformation scene. It was just a whole reference or Easter egg towards Sailor Moon, just a pretty cool little transformation situation that the animation team decided to expand upon. We also get another little anime only scene of Saitama and Moomin Rider on a bike together, just bonding, so it was nice seeing that. Also, the fight between the 4 heroes from the Hero Association versus Deep Sea King in the evacuation center plays out a little bit differently in the manga. In the anime, they kind of quickly all get off screen and one-shotted, but in the manga it shows a little bit more detail. It shows Jet Nice Guy getting impaled by Deep Sea King, and of course it just shows just a tiny bit more action. Nothing too crazy. But moving on to episode 9, the fight between Genos, Deep Sea King, and Moomin Rider just get a little bit extra love in the anime because they always do a good job with those fights. And that scene where the little kid encourages Moomin Rider is also an anime original, so that's not in the manga. In the anime, right after defeating Deep Sea King, it cuts to Speedo Sound Sonic coming back with his weapons to look for Deep Sea King, but my boy is dead by then. But then it immediately cuts right back to Saitama and Genos opening up fan mail that was dropped off by a drone that's anime only, because in the manga it was actually dropped off from a plane with a parachute. So I guess they made that change to make the Hero Association look more up to date. But like I was saying, after opening up their fan mail, it cuts to the scene of that asshole who was talking trash about Saitama and the heroes. But compare that to the manga, it actually shows the asshole first and then it shows them opening up the fan letters. Just a little difference there. By the way, that asshole was wearing a t-shirt in the manga that said NEAT on it, and apparently that means not in education or training in Japanese, so it's a pretty good label for that guy. We're also introduced to Shibabawa in the manga a little bit earlier than in the anime, because in the anime she was teased in the post-credit scene, and in the anime we're shown a Might Mask reviewing footage of Saitama fighting Deep Sea King. Also in the anime, when Saitama arrives to the Hero Association's call for him getting promoted after defeating Deep Sea King, we also see a lot of the Hero Association workers looking down on Saitama and discussing whether or not the rumors of him being a fraud were true. But in the manga it was kind of the same. They threw in some more of like the rumors. They were a lot more specific about the rumors and the way he cheated. I'll throw it up on screen here. And there's also a tease about Fubuki and her Blizzard group that wasn't in the anime at all. So yeah, not only that, but we do get that extra anime only scene in the hospital with Stinger, Lightning Max, and of course Pure Prisoner. It was a pretty funny little short scene, but I'm glad they added it. Episode 10 starts off with an anime exclusive scene where it shows Tatsumaki versus the Ancient King, and she ends up bringing a meteor down on him, so it was a pretty cool little scene showing off her powers and whatnot. Everything in the manga and the anime is the same up until where they all meet up in that Hero Association meeting. Some of the S-class heroes in the anime just get a little bit more screen time. When it cuts to Melzargard killing the Sky King and his goons, Melzargard uses an axe in the anime, whereas in the manga he uses a hammer. And in the anime we also get a little bit of a tiny original scene where we see a father and his son encounter Melzargard, and obviously we see the fight between EIN and Melzargard, and then Atomic Samurai shows up to back him up. When some of the S-class heroes arrive on the battlefield, we see Pure Prisoner straight up go and use his Dark Angel Rush on Melzargard in front of him, but in the manga he actually ends up sneaking behind him and then uses his Dark Angel Rush. We also get some anime only scenes of the Hero Association really doing their job. They're issuing evacuation warnings and they're trying to get the accurate count of survivors and of course assess the damage. So that was pretty cool seeing them really take action. And the fight between Saitama and Groribas played out a little bit differently in the manga, because in the anime Groribas jumps at Saitama and gets ready to spit on him, but in the manga he's at a higher level. He essentially has the high ground and uses his acid breath to shower it all over him, but Saitama clearly was not gonna let that happen and he kind of just runs right through him. Episode 11 starts off with anime only scenes that bridge the gap between the two episodes. We see a televised broadcast of the invasion, and we also see some familiar faces, aka Saitama's previous foes like Speedo Sound Sonic and Hammerhead, listening in on the current invasion. The anime also adds scenes with Child Emperor working hard and warning the Hero Association about the rising energy levels of the dark matter ship. We also get to see some of the search and and rescue teams that the Hero Association put up, like Moomin Rider, Lightning Max, and Stinger. And in the anime, the fight between Saitama and Guryagen Shupe was almost the same, except it took place in the control room, as where in the manga it kind of took place in front of Boros in his throne, or where the gravity sphere is. But from here on out, the anime is pretty faithful to the manga, and there isn't a lot of differences. I will tell you one thing though. During one part of the fight between Saitama and Boros, where Boros catches Saitama off guard and hits him on the back of his head, in the manga it shows the exact same thing, right? But when Saitama is just kind of hunched over, there's a text there that says he took damage, and that text obviously didn't show up in the anime, but that text right there caused a lot of controversy, and I'm not going to get into why that was such a big controversy, okay? I just wanted to point out the difference there. Also, in the manga, the fight between Saitama and Boros, Saitama has a lot of inner monologue that can only be found in the manga, and unfortunately it's not in the anime. No shit. But after the big battle, and of course Saitama's battle, we have a little anime only scene between Amai Mask and Genos, where Amai Mask kind of scolds Genos for his performance. And in another anime only moment, we see Tatsumaki and Genos being present when Saitama emerges from the ship, but in the manga it actually shows Super Alloy Darkshine and Atomic Samurai there being present when that happens. I can see why they changed that. They didn't want Atomic Samurai or Super Alloy Darkshine to be suspicious of Saitama. But other than that, that one scene where Tatsumaki launches Genos into that rock, Saitama pulls off an arm trying to get him out, but that doesn't happen in the manga either. After that, we get Genos narrating the narration or monologue that was in the manga, and everything played out the same, but in the anime they added some extra scenes in just to spice it up a bit. And in this episode's end credit scene, it was all exclusive to the anime. We see a couple of scenes of Saitama's house and this very mysterious notebook filled with data about Boros' ship and maybe even Boros' technology. Now, I'm not sure if this is Genos writing all this. It most likely is, but I'm glad they added that. But after that, we get the final fight of the series, and that's gonna be between Saitama and the disaster level dragon Pluton, a gigantic monster that was just running through cities, absolutely obliterating it. And of course, we see a nice cool little shot of Genos saving a little boy who was about to be crushed by Pluton, and Saitama quickly comes in, leaps off the ground, and one punches Pluton. And Saitama's pretty frustrated that he's back to one punching foes now, and it was honestly just a great way to conclude the series.